Okay. For people joining this live stream, we are talking about geometric scenes, and this is mostly graphic design. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The second part is more a content discussion, but the first part, yes.
Right.
Okay.
All
right. So we have. What does step 4 mean here?
This is a geometric instruction that he's using as an example.
We discussed the shape, and we will come back in part 2 of the meeting.
Right.
For now, let's just accept the inner list structure as the steps.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just an example, sort of for the sake of showing an example.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to be sorry, but I was just trying to say that step 4 is we haven't named any of the steps. So since it's displaying the last step.
I got it.
Right.
Okay. All right. So mouse is outside the scene. Okay. The mouse, is this the mouse is a hover? This is on hover.
Yes.
So this isn't the actual, this doesn't look the same. What does that arrow down mean?
So, okay, so it means it's indicating that you can change these things because the guiding principle was that when it's just sitting in a notebook, you want it to look like a printout, and then you only want all
exactly.
Yes. So for example, if you'd actually named that step, so if you'd assigned a name to step 4, it would look like a figure, right? Because that would sort of be the title of the figure. So that's the idea behind there, and then the little blue arrows are just to show that
there is something that can happen.
Exactly, yeah. And that happens in 2 stages. So the first is when you hover over it, and then you get those elements.
Question. Do you really want, I mean, in terms of making the printout look beautiful, do you really want an indicator on every one of these, or do you want something globally here? You know, globally in the corner here that just says, hello, can be made active.
Yeah, we could do that.
I mean, we could just have a little plus or something in the corner that indicates, I don't know what the best indicator of, I don't know whether you have a metaphor for that elsewhere. I think it'll be cleaner, so we don't have to annotate every random piece with this.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's not, we don't necessarily, have all of those things. I don't know how tragic it would be to have those 2 very subtle indicators.
And what would happen if you click this one that then represents both?
Well, I assume you just go to the hover state here.
I see.
I see what you're saying. You're saying there is a click action. Well, let me look at what you go to from here.
Okay, so you can see the hover state, and on the hover state you get the various bits of the UI. So you get sort of the zoom controls bottom right. You can step through the steps at the top. There's reset the scene, and then there's sort of the paste menu, and also we've indicated on hover the anchoring of points. So you can see A and B have got a blue outline around them because they're anchored. So again, that kind of indicates that you can sort of click within the scene.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So hold on. If you were to click here, what would you get? Is there? You're gonna tell me what happens if I click down on step 4.
Well, you just get a little pop-up menu of the steps. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, unless they were named, in which you'd get you'd get, I don't know, first, whatever you name the first step to, etc.
Okay, but now, by the way, I thought we were having, sorry, just a procedural thing. I thought we were having Christina in these meetings when we're discussing UI features.
I've never even heard this name coming up.
Okay. Can somebody please get her? I'm sending mail here.
Who is Christina?
UX design analyst of intended part of QA that deals with UX. Okay. All right, let's see.
So for example, you're asking sort of what happens if you click on steps. Well, underneath it's got if you click on conclusion.
Okay.
So again, you'd get like a pop-down menu, and I've just selected a random one there. And it's annotated the drawing.
Okay, sorry. The thing I was going to comment on is you click that position there, but then doesn't this jump over here?
Well, it does, but you don't click it because as soon as you hover over it, that overlay, you get that overlay, right?
Well,
yeah.
I guess the question is right. Is the title selectable, right? If it's not, then it doesn't matter that the button gets wider because you're still clicking. If the
Yeah, right. So in other words, if I click here, I still have the pull down. I still have the same pull down as if I were to click here. That's
Correct.
what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, it's one that sort of gray box indicates that is one control. And remember, as soon as your mouse goes over it, you see the gray thing.
Hello.
So sorry, as soon as your mouse goes over this, you see the gray thing, but its place where you click has jumped, but it doesn't matter to you.
Right.
I mean,
as long as the button is not selectable, right, that doesn't matter. If the content of the button is selectable, then the fact that the click zone has moved would matter. So I guess we're assuming that the title is not selectable.
Also, I just point out that everything appears as one on hover. It's not like you hover over step 4 and you just get that little bit appearing at the top. If you hover over the scene,
sure, but if you go to where that blue button is before hover, and that's the active click zone, and now the click zone is still the little blue down arrow, which has now moved 3/4 of the way across the graphics, then that very much matters.
Yeah, but what we're saying is the click zone.
Right.
Well, we have.
If the question is the click zone the little down arrow, or is it?
I think it's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's the gray thing.
Right. Okay. So, which means, in particular, as I was saying earlier, that means that that title is not selectable.
Which is correct.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
All right.
It's just a button. Or it's not. It's a menu.
Okay. The anchoring. What color are the anchors?
So there's a whole. If you scroll down, there's a whole section on anchoring.
Okay. By the way, practical question: how long is this meeting going to be? Do we have a lot of stuff, or do we not have so much stuff?
It was scheduled for 1 hour.
All right. Okay. You think it will take an hour? Okay, that's fine. Okay.
So at that point, I'm just driving home the point that if you move the mouse outside of it and you selected conclusion, then it just
the conclusion stays.
Yeah, the conclusion stays, and it now just looks like sort of a figure with a caption.
Okay.
And then the editability comes when you actually click in the scene itself. And you pop an attached cell with those controls there. So the point about anchoring is that if we're allowing you to programmatically pre-anchor stuff, then having that blue outline is probably not a good idea because it's not at all obvious what it means. But if we're not allowing programmatic pre-anchoring, then the only way you could set it is by clicking on, what A, B, or C anchored points, and therefore you'd know that's what the blue outline meant because you would have put it there.
Yeah, right.
If we don't allow that, if you scroll down to the next one, and we do allow pre-anchoring, then we could, maybe use a different icon like an anchor, something like that.
Right. Although I mean, maybe it's just because these screen sharings make things look smaller, but I had no idea what those anchor symbols were until somebody said, "Oh, those are little anchors."
Yeah. Okay. The iconography isn't perfect, but okay. So what is the answer programmatically to whether things are pre-anchorable?
So currently, in what we showed you last week, if you have a construction and you're at a step where a point has been introduced in a previous step, that point is automatically anchored unless you do something in later steps. But it's easy enough to just have everything unanchored to begin with.
Right, and which I think is correct, because the net result is if you have a multi-step scene, then by default everything is anchored when you first create it, which just seems ridiculous.
So wait a minute. So the anchoring is then a user added thing that if you have a multi-step, so anchoring without multiple steps doesn't make a lot of sense. Is that a true statement?
False.
Well, I mean, initially you wouldn't, but you would.
Anchoring says which points to keep fixed, as if you move another point, which points to try to keep fixed in order while still resolving all the constraints.
Right. Okay. So this is something where we can interactively manipulate these figures.
Right, and you can just drag C there, and that will say, well, keep, A and B fixed, which presumably means you can't actually successfully drag C anywhere, well, other than to the other intersection of the circle.
Because it's a equilateral triangle or whatever. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And now what happens in this case? Okay. So hold on. With respect to dragging discontinuously, that is, C only has one more solution here. What happens as you drag?
Well, as you drag, it'll just show it. That doesn't do any computations besides showing the ghost of C, so it doesn't know what you're doing. If you happen to release it, on or very near that the other intersection.
What if you release it somewhere else?
Then it will try for like 5 seconds to come up with the computation that lets C be there and
realize it can't and restore the previous state.
Right, restore the previous state.
Okay, so it doesn't try to go to the nearest viable state because it doesn't know that.
No.
Okay. And so you have just some zone. I mean, if I drop C off about here, for example, what will it do?
That's probably a little too far. There's I forget exactly what the zone is, but
is it settable?
Not currently, no.
Probably should be.
Okay.
Okay, so most of the time then.
Right, but for example, if you were to unanchor B and drag C, then A would stay where it is, but then B would move, presumably to accommodate where you released C.
Yep.
Assuming D is also, you unfix D, because D is the distance between A and B, I think. But.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So here, this will be a list of points, basically. And what you're saying is, okay, so if there is pre-anchoring, I don't understand why the pre-anchoring just wouldn't show up here, and then to remove the pre-anchor, you toggle it.
So,
right, that's what's currently implemented. The issue that some have come up with is that it's not entirely intuitive what anchoring means until you do it yourself. So pre-anchoring things might cause confusion.
But more importantly, currently the default is everything is pre-anchored, which means you can't actually drag anything until you've successfully.
Okay, so that's probably wrong. Look, I think what we should say, why don't we change this name to be fixed points, just like we say fixed quantities, because they're the same concept.
It was originally that I changed it to anchored, but yeah, we'll change it back.
Okay.
Well, the problem with fixed points is people might think that means you're not allowed to drag a fixed point. But you are allowed to drag a fixed point. It's only fixed if you're trying to move other points.
I see. But these quantities,
Well, you can't drag a quantity directly.
Right.
Although we could have a slider which would allow you to drag the quantity.
Right. That's been brought up, and probably not for 12.2, but I think trying to add slider capabilities for the quantities would probably make sense.
What would be the clearest thing to say? Points held fixed or something. What would you say if you were allowed to have any number of words? What would you say?
Points fixed under movement of other points.
That's too long.
Yeah, well, he said any number of words.
Yeah, okay, but so the concept is,
In a sense, they're stationary points, right? You can drag them, but they don't move on their own.
right. It's not adaptable.
But if we just
not...
keep it as anchored points and we unanchor a point when you try to move it. Then an anchored point is just one that doesn't move. But if you click on it and try to drag it, it unanchors.
Well, would it go back to being anchored once you drop it?
No.
That's not obviously correct.
You still might not know to be able to drag it in the first place, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so the just a minute. Points. What is this called in drawing programs or elsewhere, or control points? Those aren't obviously the right thing, but what
well that is anchoring. But the difference is that they are indeed anchored. They won't move. You can't move them. Do you mean if you want to have a shape that you just can't edit at all until you unanchor it, so to speak?
I think Stephen means control point in the sense of splines.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Just a minute. Okay, so the question here, let's see, we want something which means only you can move it. It does not automatically move. Right? A point that automatically moves is
dependent, maybe?
Yeah, dependent is I mean, that's the concept. Unfortunately, that sounds too mathematical and will get people confused.
Non-updating points, maybe? Non-updating? Because actually we've got pause updates, which kind of freezes the whole thing.
Yes.
Okay, that's a different sort of action that you're doing, but we could sort of mirror the language there, I suppose. Points that don't auto-update.
Yeah, the problem is Sandra is suggesting locked, and so is Ethan, but that isn't right, because locked, you see, the whole point is you can move it. There's nothing wrong with you moving it. It just doesn't move, but when you move something else, it doesn't get moved.
What about auto-locked? Or auto-fixed?
Yeah, I mean, it's fixed under automatic motion.
Right.
It's not that it automatically fixes, it's fixed with respect to automatic motion.
I was going to say, you could also say that it's placed. Right? I put it somewhere.
The truth is, this is every point, and you're indicating points that move automatically versus points that don't.
Correct.
Could you flip it then and
So if you invert it, it's the automatically updated points are the ones that are selected.
Yeah, except we want to have this ring somehow to indicate. Okay, so look, I mean, really this is points and quantities are the two things we have here. One thing is points, the other thing is quantities. And it's a list of all of them, right?
Yes.
Although, I mean, it's certainly comprehensible to label just the subclass and, you know, the ones which are active. Actually,
I was confused when I initially saw this. I think it's better to just say this is all points.
Oh, do you mean you think anchored points implies that that's a sublist?
That's right. That's what I thought.
Okay, okay.
Pinned is a suggestion from Bob on our live stream, which is not a bad name.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, what do we do for quantities?
Well, I mean, since we currently can't move quantities anyways, you know, fixed is unambiguous.
Yeah. I like pinned. Pinned suggests that you could move it around. Now, the question is, though, you know, this really is a list of all points.
You could change it to the verb. So anchor points fix quantities.
No, that's not going to work because it represents state, right? I mean, it's got, I think.
Right. Exactly.
Right, but by selecting it, you're changing the state, which is.
I know, but no, I think the point is that because you've got a list of all the points here, I really think it should be called points, or it's going to be very confusing.
I strongly disagree with that, Stephen. I mean, it's a very well-established idiom that you say blank thing, and then you have a checkbox bar, and only the things which are actively selected have that property.
All right. Okay, well, in that model, it will be pinned points and fixed quantities. I mean, the alternative will be something like points, and then the annotation that says are pinned or something.
Or I suppose an intermediate point, an intermediate state might be point, and then in parentheses, click to pin.
Yes. Well, click to pin or unpin.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that would be very ugly to see all the time.
Tooltip, I guess.
Yeah, but the problem with that is you don't know it's there. You don't know what you can do with these points. I mean, you don't even know pinning isn't really a thing. You don't even know you can pin. I mean, except your point is you don't even get this attached cell unless you click.
Correct.
I mean, there could be one of those little question mark boxes.
No, nobody will ever click it. They'll never discover you can pin points. It really bothers me to say pinned points and then you got a list of all the points. How can we deal with this?
How about something like points, colon, and then pinned with the blue border around it.
What do you mean pin with the blue border?
Right.
So a
So you
legend-like thing.
like literally you have point, colon, and then in parentheses, or point, open parentheses, the word pinned with the, you know.
Well, or just you just have an O there, you know, a heavy O, meaning pinned.
Oh, yeah, that would work. Yeah, with the same blue coloring as the actual.
I think this will work. Points, and then that says blah 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 pin. So you've got some idea that you can do something to pin things. And if nothing is pinned, then that comment is irrelevant.
Yep.
Okay, pause updates. What does that mean?
So this is if you want to move around, if you want to drag and drop multiple points before it tries to automatically update. So if pause updates is not selected, then if you drag a point, as soon as you drop it, the computation starts. But if you want to move multiple points at once, then you have to indicate that somehow, and that's pause updates.
I think it should be a check mark that says continuous update.
No, this is misleading with respect to the meaning of continuous update and manipulate, where it means while you move.
Right.
So
Oh, this isn't while you move. Okay.
Right. So it could be update on release.
But that sounds like we're getting a newer version every.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is true.
The update. No, but the issue, I didn't understand this. So this means you are going to you check that button, you move a bunch of points around, and then you say update again, and then you re-click that button.
Correct.
That was completely not what I got from that terminology. Well, maybe the iconography is problematic because look, if it was, I was going to say, if it was a depressed button that said updating or something, or updating enable. Go ahead. Noah, you had a suggestion.
What if you had essentially a setter bar, not a setter bar, you know, like a two, I forgot what the name of it is, two buttons next to each other, and they alternate when you click one. And the first one says move single, and the second one says move multiple. No, because it wouldn't work, because you have to switch it back once you've moved. Not yet, no.
Sandra's suggesting calling it dynamic, but I don't think that works because the basic point is, no, I mean, this is you press it, you move multiple points around. So generally it's not pressed, but you press it. Look, this is an obscure operation. So one thing we could do is
I don't think so.
Right, I think it's pretty natural.
I think so too.
Okay, hold on. I've got an idea. Okay, we simply have a button that says move multiple points. Okay, you press it, and then it goes into a state where it says
update now.
End moving multiple points. So yeah, update now. That's fine. Yes. Or adjust multiple points or something. Adjust. What does it mean to drag? Drag multiple points.
And then
update now. Update figure now.
Does drag multiple points make it sound like you have to do them all at once?
How would you do this?
Yeah.
I mean, that's my concern, is that somebody
with a multi-touch device.
Yeah, so that you like you know,
Would you
do a
think it's sound-
multi-selection and then drag them or something.
What does several sound better to you instead of multiple?
Arrange. How about rearrange multiple points?
That sounds good to me.
Ditto.
I might add a manually in there just because, yeah, when the automatic updating happens, we're presumably rearranging multiple points, but this means that the user is
well, in that case, we could say move. If we say manually, we could say manually move multiple points.
What's the UX of how do you make that happen in that case?
Press that button, and the button says, okay, so now it says when you press that button, it goes to saying
Update figure now.
well, manually move multiple points. Then
What if it was just update scene manually? Is that
no, that's
help.
not going to work because oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying, you see, because
I was thinking a case where the scene only updated maybe when you mouse out. Some behavior where you don't have to click, but it also knows not to do anything until you're done.
I don't think we should do that. I think it's not. I think I see what you're saying. You're trying to avoid the fact that you have to have. I mean, what does happen if you click outside this and you've set manually move multiple points, and now you click outside, what does it do? Does it just leave it with that extruded tongue down there, saying, in other words, when you click back inside, the extruded tongue would still be there. Is that correct?
Presumably, yes. All right. I mean, at least that the current implementation is that pause updates is remembered serialized state. So when you click out, the button, the attached cell would disappear, but the state would persist. And then when you click back in, it would the attached cell would reappear, and it would still be at the same state you last left it.
Yeah, Connor on live stream is talking about manual mode versus automatic mode. That's unfortunately not the correct description, because this allows you to move these points without updating.
So see, okay, the two sections above, and okay, I've forgotten what we changed the names to, but currently anchored points and fixed quantities, they've got a title and then they've got the content. We could guide the user a bit, and we could actually provide a title for that section that says something like, updating scene. Scene updating, and then a button underneath that says update scene, and then a checkbox that says auto update after drag, and that checkbox is on automatically. So it's a bit more verbose, but instead of trying to ram it all in one button, you have a heading like the other two above it.
All right, okay, let's write this down. So what are you saying here? You're saying so
you'd have a heading for that, because that section.
Okay, let's write the whole thing out. Okay, so what you're saying is points, and then it says blah 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 pinned, right? Icon pinned. Quantities, blah 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 pinned. No, fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, now what are you proposing here?
Okay, the wording isn't quite right, but something like scene updating for the heading for the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess what you haven't put in the others is that under points you then have the list of points, under quantities you have the list of quantities, in other words the controls, and then the data controls, a button perhaps that says update scene, and then a checkbox underneath it that says something like auto update after drag, and that is ticked by default.
Wait a minute, update scene is something.
That's a button. Which could grey out if the checkbox is ticked.
Mhm.
Yes, that would make sense. So the button, so update scene, the button that says update scene grays out if the checkbox is ticked, and the checkbox, yes, as you said, is auto update after drag, and that is automatically, that's on by default.
I would flip it. I would have the checkbox auto update, and then when the checkbox is unchecked, you get an update button to the right of it.
Oh, I see. But will people figure out? Will people figure out the?
I would have the button visible always, maybe underneath it, so it's a column rather than a row, perhaps.
Yeah, but wait. Will anybody ever figure this out? I mean, in other words, they want to. The action that they're trying to do is move multiple points around. Okay, they're frustrated. They'll try it once. They'll try moving 2 points. They'll realize they can't do that. Will they be able to make the inference that you can move multiple points if you can remove the auto update after drag?
Well, that was what the heading was for, to try and guide people to sort of say, well, that's what it does. So maybe the heading, scene updating, could be something a bit better.
I think we've done enough with this here. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but we're close. It's one
Well,
of
back
these.
to my idea. So scene updating, 1 would be automatic and 2 would be on mouse out. Again, it's like you move things around as soon as your mouse leaves.
But I don't
or
think we've
only
even
on mouse
defined
out.
what. But that's a different action then.
But it allows you to move as much as you want, and then nothing will happen until you leave the scene, right?
But I
Your
don't
mouse
think you.
goes
I don't
away.
think you want to leave the scene of the geometry, so to speak.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I just don't think that's the right action. I think this is stuff you're interactively doing, focusing on this.
So that raises a question that I have for Noah and maybe the geometry folk, which is, so this is an attached cell, which is, in place because you've clicked into the scene.
Yeah.
If you now go and click somewhere completely different in the notebook, presumably the attached cell dismisses, but what happens if you're in an unupdated state?
Well, I guess you have 2 options. One is that you auto do the update for them, but I think my preference would be you just cancel the action.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, back to scene updating. If it's scene updating automatic manual, what if checking manual adds a button next to the plus minus, like a little refresh button next to the plus minus above? So it's part of your, right, it's part of the scene.
See.
Ah.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. And the refresh button, I mean, I don't know whether we can iconographically have a refresh button with a, like in a browser with a.
Yeah, I think that would be enough.
So that, yeah, the iconography is not great. If you scroll up slightly so you can see the top of that. Right, that back arrow is refresh the screen at the top right there.
Oh.
I thought that was to go to the original state of the scene, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that's not refresh in this sense.
No,
yeah.
refresh should be a recycle button.
Yeah.
Right.
What's that thing?
Scroll down a bit. There's an action menu below. Keep scrolling. Right. Okay. So that's what we currently have in the sort of manipulator plus icon.
Why isn't that a hamburger of some kind? I mean, that seems to be the iconography that we're using for those kinds of menus.
Okay.
But is it? Wait. I believe that right. We've split that one menu into 2 buttons, and there's the share button, which is right the penultimate button, and that's for all the paste things, and then the button on the right is the go back to initial settings.
Wait a minute. Which button are we talking about? There are 2 buttons here.
Right, and I just said the penultimate button that looks like a share button is for all the pasty things. And then the button
that doesn't look like a share button. This looks like a go back button here.
You mean the other one? The one on the end is all the paste stuff.
I don't know why you're saying penultimate for that, because it's the
It's
ultimate
ultimate.
to the right.
There's no
Yes,
pen there.
sorry.
Okay. All right, you lost your pen, right, or something. Okay. So you mean this button here? This button here?
Yes, I was temporarily confused because I'm on a different operating system where where my share button looks more like the go back button.
Okay. Okay, what I'm suggesting is that this be either the hamburger or, which by the way is probably what we should change the plus in a manipulate to.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that's just become the general iconography for, menu do something. So
I think the reason.
Go ahead.
No, the reason why we had a slightly different icon was because, so a hamburger one is, you could do all sorts of things in it, but that only contains all the paste operations.
What about find conjectures? Does it contain that? That's hardly a paste operation.
Well, you're pasting the conjecture.
What?
You're still pasting. You just have to do a computation first.
I think this distinction will be lost on people. I think we should just have a hamburger menu and we can put other stuff in that menu if we need to.
Okay.
That's what I think.
You're saying get rid of the initial settings button and just have it in the hamburger menu?
Well, if you want to have that button as a convenience, that's fine. I wouldn't take it out of the menu. People will look for it in the menu. Just have all the stuff in the menu. If it really turns out initial settings is the most important thing, then you could.
I don't think it is.
I don't think so.
Okay, fine. Then just let's put it all in the menu. Okay, what's that thing there?
Oh, recenter the view.
Oh. Do we have another piece of iconography for that, for things like geo? I mean, we'll need that iconography for lots of dynamic graphics. What about dynamic image? Does it have an iconography for that?
I've never seen it before. I
Not
think this
that
is
I
new
remember.
for iconography. Yeah.
So you know how there's currently a project for pan and zoom graphics in the cloud, and I was doing UX for that. And actually, the icon I used for reset view was the arrow that I've used at the top there.
Okay, fine. That seems reasonable to me.
Oh yeah, and we're combining those two buttons anyway, so that's not a problem. We can use that icon to reset the view. Perfect. Okay.
That seems reasonable to me. Plus, minus, and a reset. That seems plausible to guess that that's what that would mean.
Right. Do you think the reset the view is to just recenter the graphics? Okay.
Yeah. And I assume that pan here, is there a pan based on just thumbing? I mean, pick.
Yes.
Okay.
The cursor, look, there you go. You can see it there. It turns into an open hand. No, as in scroll down a bit. Sorry. The second. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Mouse down does this. Okay.
It's just showing a more minimal example. If you haven't specified steps and you've hidden the conclusions, then that's what it would look like.
Okay. By the way, this border, what color should it be? I really come to like the purple border of graphs. I think it's very stylish. I'm actually getting rather fed up with the orange border of graphics. I think we might want to change that orange. But I really like the distinction of I've got a graph. It's cool and purple, so to speak. My question is on click. What is this? Is this a graphic or is this something different? It's not really a graphic. It's something different. I think it should have another exotic theming color.
What does image use? Is it orange?
I think image is orange, isn't it?
I think image is orange.
Those are images. Just click on one.
What's that? Oh, they are.
Oh.
Okay. Well, that's the answer. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, well.
Yes, although at least you have the menu to tell you that it's not a graphics.
Yes. I mean, I would personally, a slightly different color here might be a good thing.
I mean, I think we should use more colors there, generally speaking.
What do you mean by there? You mean in the border?
In the border.
I also think this thing is extremely drab and all gray. It's like, let's have some more, joy of editing or something.
Well,
I mean, even just a wash of color behind it would be helpful, I think. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm very colorblind, so it's going to stay gray until someone tells me specifically what to do otherwise, because I have no sense for these things.
Fair enough. Okay, geometric step. What is this? Is this a completely different piece of design?
Yes. So this was your
language design.
Right. You had mentioned last time you didn't like that to represent a geometric construction. It was just turning the second argument from a list of non-lists into a list of lists. You want something more explicit. You had mentioned actually having a geometric construction head. We talked about this at our weekly meeting. We didn't necessarily, the problem with that was it made it kind of awkward to
well, for one thing, our constructions aren't actually constructions. They're just multi-step scenes.
Right. But also, I mean, if the main thing you would want to do is to annotate a step, and if you have, geometric construction head, then you have to find some way of lining up the step descriptions with the actual step.
Well, what about this, an association?
Well, would you have an association for each, if you have an association for each step?
But how much annotation you're going to need? But these geometric steps, can they be floated with other things, or do they all have to come together?
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, can you intersperse other things between geometric steps, or
Yes.
is it always?
Well, I would say like that. Look at the last bullet point. So if there's at least one geometric step wrapper, then we assume we're a construction, and any consecutive non-geometric step things get grouped together. And that's kind of currently how it works with the list of lists. If you have some naked things, then the consecutive ones just get grouped together in the same step, which I think makes sense.
Having been recently reading Euclid, this business, where he just says, his statement is to inscribe a triangle and a circle. It's like, what is this? This is not a statement. It is, what is it? What kind of a thing is that? The full version of that is a construction exists with ruler and compass that will allow you to blah, 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 blah. Correct? So
Right.
How does that relate to what you're doing here?
Well, maybe this is splitting hairs, but it's not just an existence statement. He's giving the construction. The geometric scene is the construction. It may be split up.
I understand that. Although Euclid himself, confusingly enough, did not give any proofs or constructions. He just made those statements.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least so far as one can tell. I mean, that's a historical point of no interest, but I mean that because then his quote's proof is then a construction.
Right.
Yep.
And so that's merging the notion of what's a proof and what's a statement, so to speak. I mean, then
like a geometric scene need not make any statement at all. It need not have a third argument.
In other words, it's just set up.
I just say I want to have a geometric scene that represents the process of first drawing this triangle, then drawing this line, and so on.
Right. So when you run random instance on a construction, it interprets it differently. It just looks at the first step, draws the first step, and then when it moves to a subsequent step, everything from previous steps is fixed. Rather than just a generic geometric scene, if you run random instance on it, it tries to arrange everything at once.
All right, listen, maybe I just need my lunch too badly, but this seems okay to me, at least as an experimental thing. I'm not 100% sold on the way that that you can have. But am I correct in thinking you can intersperse statements and geometric steps?
Well, the
Yes,
idea,
and then it will normalize into a list of geometric steps.
right? It would GeometricScene would auto evaluate to a list of geometric steps, but you would.
But what happens to that Euclidean distance thing that's there? Where would that get put?
It would be,
That would be
in its own geometric step.
Yeah, that would be put in its own geometric step. And if there were multiple things there, they'd get grouped together in the same geometric step.
But so then the only thing the geometric step is doing for you is providing an annotation. Is that true?
Well, providing annotation and, separating the steps as they're random.
But this isn't a step. I mean, this Euclidean distance thing isn't a step.
It is.
Well, you're saying you're introducing the points A and B, and you're saying we're going to keep track of the distance between them.
All right.
Right. I mean, look at what the next step is. The next step is 2 circles.
But what do I see in the pictures when I get to that step? So if I see multiple steps here, that will be showing up as step blah, blah, blah here, right?
Right. Unless you name them.
Right.
How do you name them? How do you name them? Is the name the second argument?
Yeah, that would be the optional second argument. And presumably it would, in the display, we'd have some character limit, and then it would just have a ... after. That's what I would guess. And then if you scroll over, it would have the full description. Or mouse
and in terms of what you see, it will show you what it needs to draw in order to represent that statement. So if it's a statement about circles, it'll draw those circles if they're not there.
Right.
I see. By the way, I don't think it's so obvious. I think you're going to have a tooltip to give the full description because it's not going to fit necessarily here.
Right. I think it'll be a tooltip.
Okay.
And then if we have plot themes for the whole thing, we could have a plot theme where anything new that we introduce in that step, when we're looking at that step, it's highlighted, if we want that.
Well, I would have thought that should be one of these controls. I would have thought that should be in the hamburger menu.
Okay, yeah, that's certainly something we could put in the hamburger menu.
Fine. All right. Boy, it's after we've done Euclid, we go back and do the Babylonian problems. I think Bernat was just finally solving one of those weird problems with the geometry of loons that was on some Babylonian exercise thing from 3,500 years ago.
Well, we can get a cuneiform intern for next summer.
Yeah, right. Well, meanwhile, young Christopher happens to be working on these astronomical diary, making these Babylonian astronomical diaries computable, which has many joys of such weird things, including their incredibly bizarre date system in which apparently they randomly added months from time to time because things had gone wrong or because they wanted to collect more tax that year. Anyway, okay, sounds good. All right, terrific.
Could you send this updated notebook you've been working on to us?
I will try to do so. It's
fine. Give it your best shot.
I think. All right. Let's see. Who should I send it to?
D. McDonald.
Okay.
Or T. Alpha Euclid, actually, probably, so everyone can see it.
Okay. All right. There it goes. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Good stuff. And talk to you all soon. Thanks to folks on the live stream as well. Okay. Actually, we have another live stream coming up about physics and multi-way game systems in a few minutes.